like I was made for it. I feel like I was made for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the UnconQuerable Because We Believe vlog series. Please give a round of applause for yourselves, man. We are here. I appreciate y'all, man. I got family in the building. I just appreciate that we're all here right now. And these special folks right here, I define as UnconQuerable, right? But before I talk about what the UnconQuerable is, because everyone's been asking me, what's the UnconQuerable? I want to introduce the special guests that are here. I'll start to the far left. This queen is in her master's program over at UNLV for Urban Affairs, correct?
It is Public Policy and Urban Leadership.
Oh, Public Policy and Urban Leadership. She's been a silent killer in the community for a long time. And I say that because many people don't know what she's done with young queens out here. She had her own organization, mentoring young girls. She not only mentoring them, but she makes them feel beautiful by making their own dresses. She has her own business. She's an entrepreneur. And I've had the pleasure of knowing this queen all my life. Really all my life. Our mothers work with each other, and I'm just grateful for her being here. Miss Jordan Hawkins, please give her a round of applause. Miss Jordan Hawkins.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And the king next to her is someone I've met over the years. I've seen him out here doing phenomenal things across the West Side. And I know he's matriculating to different cities, but the housing corporate assistance program that he has, I'm sorry, I know I butchered it.
Corporation.
Thank you. He's been doing phenomenal with him, Akeem, and his crew, renovating homes, making sure people are good. I've witnessed this man's growth, and his story is phenomenal, but I'm gonna allow him to tell you a story. This young gentleman right here, my man Dante. Please give a round of applause for my man Dante. And last but not least, Teacher Bay. Teacher Bay, right? No, this queen right here, I've known her for about about 5-6 years now. She's worked at Canyon Springs. She was a teacher. Everyone knows her there. She's a coach. She has her own businesses as well. Definitely has been someone I've admired working with a lot of the queens that I've worked with. And she's always pushing people. It don't matter who you are. She's gonna make sure to hold you accountable too, especially as black men and black women. And everyone that's around her, she's always pushed the bar. She's always been someone with social change, about social change. And I have a pleasure to introducing this queen, Miss Sade, aka CC. Thank you for coming. Yes. So thank y'all for coming to the show. This is episode 1, education versus reality, right? But before we even talk about the episode in general, I'm gonna just give y'all a background story about what the UnconQuerable is. So I am in my PhD program at UNLV for the CME program. So it's the curriculum instruction program with a concentration in cultural studies, international education, and multicultural education, right? And of course, I'm someone who cares about social change. I mentor, I work in higher ed. It's something that is really ingrained in me that I just grew to love. I thought that I was going to be a therapist, but that's not what happened, right? I'm here. And so with the UnconQuerable, I was sitting here like in the summer of July, last summer, I was sitting here like, bro, what am I going to write my dissertation on? And of course I was like, okay, mentorship, but what about mentorship? So I really started thinking I thought about y'all, actually. I seen how you were still moving, and I seen how you were moving even through the pandemic. A lot of us were doing different things that people saw, people didn't see. And I was like, man, Dante's been through this. Jordan's overcame this. Shishi's been over this. There's many people that I've seen who are unconquerable. And I define unconquerable as the one who takes on structural, personal, economical, and systematic barriers and still able to achieve success in their way. Right, and that's what I defined the UnconQuerable. That's where the name came from. But it really inspired from a poem called Invictus by Mr. William Ernest Henley. The beginning stanza is, out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I think whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. And that poem I learned when I was 15 years old, and it just always stuck with me. Unconquerable souls always just stuck to me because I'm like, man, we've been through a lot. And with Jordan and I went to middle school. We went to school with a lot of cats that aren't alive today. That some of them are locked up, and thank God a lot of us made it out. We grew up in areas where it wasn't the best. We were told that we weren't going to be much, and then a lot of us still became successful anyway. And when I defined the unconquerable, I was like, okay, I got the unconquerable. What's the name of my dissertation going to be? And allow me not to stray away from it. So I defined my actual name of my dissertation is the unconquerable hyphenated what factors of informal and formal mentorship are effective for Black men towards degree completion in higher education in Nevada. Now, of course, I want to tackle more than just Black men, but when you're in your dissertation, that's where you start at. You know what I'm saying? Now that I explained what the unconquerable is, this is the vlogs here because we believe. So if you're sitting here at this table, you're someone I identified as unconquerable. There's many people out there unconquerable, and this is something that I'm not going to stop doing. This is something I'm going to keep pushing for. I'm going to get many people on here that I believe really identify with unconquerable, but just know you guys are special to my heart. Even if we don't talk all the time, I appreciate y'all being here, right? So education versus reality, right? These episodes that we're all seeing are factors of what I've been reading in all these different articles for my dissertation. Education, economics, you're talking about transportation for people, we're talking about special needs, we're talking about all these factors that affect why Black men and Black women and all these young kids of color struggle when it comes to enrolling into college, or not even just college, but trade schools, or trying to figure out what exactly they're trying to do, right? And there's so many outside factors that higher institutions or school districts don't take into account, right? So I have the first question I have for all of us is, what are the realities of going to college, trade school, or not going at all? That's something I wanted to start the discussion with. And I know it's a heavy question to unload, but that's where I wanted to start. I guess, I'll go ahead and start, right? So I'll be someone who went to college, right? I grew up in a single parent home, my mom. My dad, he was in and out of my life, wasn't really there. So luckily for me, I had that youth group called Alpha Men Divas of Tomorrow, which is under my youth group, under the fraternity's youth group, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, right? I got in that youth group, showed me different scholarships, showed me like, okay, there's the schools, great, but my mom didn't have enough money to go to these HBCUs. My GPA was cool, but it wasn't great enough for me to leave. But it was always in grade, go to college. Right. And this is your gateway to freedom. Well, I went to college, I had scholarships, but I still had to take out loans. Not knowing that these loans, right, hindered me in a way. But even though I went to college, I was grateful because it was a great escape for me. I was able to get in rooms that I didn't expect to get in, right? But there were some realities that I come to find out that comes with it, like the cons that they don't tell you. Like, okay, you take out these loans, it's gonna hit you different, right? But then I see there's friends who didn't go to college who are flourishing, who went to a trade school and make much more money than I do. And I know it's not about money, but it's about what are the realities of going to school right after high school, or going to high school, or going to college late, or not going at all. Because there's people who haven't, but they're very successful. So that's what I mean. Is like, what are the realities that y'all have seen amongst yourselves and your peers around you?
I think that in Nevada, and we'll say Clark County specifically, I don't think our economy is diverse enough to not go to college.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or if you choose not to go to college, you have to have a plan, or else you're gonna get sucked up in the fast life. And
right.
That's what most of us have been sucked into, or most of our friends have been sucked into. So, and I'm like you. Well, it took me like 10 years to graduate college. Right? Almost 10 years. So, because my mom always ingrained in us, like, you have to go to college. You know what I mean? College is a good thing, but they didn't even know themselves how to even navigate through that process. So, when I got to college, or first, even when I was applying, mind you, I was going to drop out of high school, right? So, when I decided, okay, I'm going to get my life together, I had a high school counselor took me under his wing, like, no, you're not dropping out. I'm going to help you. But I was getting denied into colleges, so I'm like, I had to go to CSN, right? I had no idea how the process worked. I took out loans, I was failing class. I just didn't know how to even navigate through this educational realm, and I'm like, what is this? So that's why it took me so long, because I had to figure it out. I had to do my own research. But I did see my friends who didn't go to college, and they work in these casino jobs, they're cocktail waitresses, they're making all these hits. I'm like, oh, well, let me go try this out. And I'm like, this ain't for me either. So I eventually went back, and I do see that now with the economy where it's at, especially in Las Vegas, and how the virus hit us so hard.
Yeah.
A lot of people are out of work. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm happy that I did take this educational route because I do have something to fall back on. You know what I mean? So I would say that's the reality for me.
Right.
In Vegas. So.
How about y'all?
I can go.
Yeah.
It's a little different for me.
Right.
Because I don't come from like higher education
Mm-hmm.
as far as, from I never I went to college, maybe I probably got like 10 credits in college, but that was through when I was in prison. And so I never experienced like what that felt like, to actually go through college. But what I will say is that when we're having this conversation, I think it depends on like what's the objective.
Right.
So from a community standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I necessarily think college is the way for us.
Okay.
I think specialization, skills, right? Because especially in the field that I'm in, being an entrepreneur, but being, in real estate, what I can tell you for sure who's never going out of work, plumbers,
Right.
electricians,
Mm-hmm.
mechanic, things of this, because we're always building,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're always tearing down and we're always building. So I'm not saying college isn't the route if we're speaking for a specific individual, but I think that skill set to me is much more lucrative from a community standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it kind of go back and forth, as far, because again, I know individuals that have their doctors, and here I am, I've been in prison over 10 years, and I hire doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And so where does that correlation, where do we kind of meet that?
Mm-hmm.
How can I, just high school diploma, graduated from prison, be in a position where I hire doctors that spent 10 and 12 years of their life to get this degree, right? To get the specialized degree. So I'm kind of on the opposite of it. I think, when we talk about education, I think it should be like with a specific purpose, not just these generalized things as far as like, hey, I graduated, with business management. What does that mean?
What does that mean? Right.
Yeah, like honestly, like really, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like to manage a business, right? Do you really have a business plan? Like,
Some people get it and don't even know how to run a business, right? And that's something that's the part I wanted your perspective, right? Because I see how successful you are. I knew business ethics, right? They teach you in college. I loved it because it teaches you that networking piece, right? And that is important. But there were certain things that I had to kind of learn on my own that the classroom didn't teach. And I'm someone who tells people, please if you can, go to college. If it's not for you, I respect it because I don't hold it against you. But I've also been able to notice because of this pandemic, it's like, oh, okay, so if you did go to college, it's beneficial here. Or if you're an entrepreneur, it's been beneficial here. Or if you're at a trade, it's been beneficial here. So there's really pros and cons to everything. It's just depending on your situation, what's beneficial for you. You know what I'm saying? And that's something that I question. It's like, okay, well, all right, well, what form of education really works best?
But even when you again, are we having this conversation from a community standpoint or individual standpoint?
Well, and I'll say two different things, exactly.
Routes. If we're saying for the community, what's good for like our young black men?
Yeah.
Right. From a community standpoint, I think skill set.
I'll say both. I'll say both for the sake of it does matter what you do as a community aspect. Okay. What does it benefit us as a whole as a community? But even though what benefit us as a community may not benefit that one person, that individual.
Correct.
So that is the question. It's both. So I really want to know what y'all have to say about that.
I'm with that.
For me, that sounds like historically the Frederick Douglass versus WEB conversation.
It is, right?
Like, do we do for the benefit of the community? Is it more important to focus on the trades or take the WEB route and go for the intellectual, formal education and stuff like that? And I've always been a Frederick in my thing. Like, I was pushed to go to college. On my white side, I'm first generation. Like, Grampy dropped out of school in 7th grade, but he's born in the 30s. My mom and them barely finished high school. So nobody was able to help me navigate on that side. And then on my black side, everybody is a Grambling alum.
Okay.
But wasn't really influential in my space. Like, I had one auntie from my black. Crazy,
Really?
right?
Oh, wait, hold up. Not influential?
No.
That's
I grew
crazy.
up with my white side.
Oh,
I grew
okay.
up with my white
Okay.
side. I was, my daddy felt like, y'all are girls, y'all need to be living with your mama. Like, he still had an impact on us and stuff like that, but he just assumed that we was always going to go to Grambling, so there wasn't much of a conversation about it. They all went, like, my whole family's from Monroe, so they up the street from Grambling. They all went on scholarship. So me not going to school on scholarship, same issue. I didn't know how to navigate. My silly self got a private loan and then a federal loan, and then it starts accruing interest and all this other stuff.
Lord.
And I was like, I was so in debt before like sophomore year was done type stuff, and my mom co-signed on it, so then she's, in some energy about it. But to be a teacher, you have to, like in one of those spaces. I've wanted to be an educator since like I could play school with my little sister and our baby dolls, like when we were kids. So I always knew I had to go to college. But Mona is a year behind me, and she wanted to go to film, and she wanted to go to USC and all this other stuff.
Well, the film school there's popping. Right.
Yeah, but my mama can't afford
both
of us to go.
Right.
I wanted to go to Howard or Grambling, and then I stayed in Vegas because I was in love in high school and didn't want all that mess. But like the biggest struggle, I think, in that is in one space not taking advantage of trade schools in high school, like VOTEC, or SECTA, or whatever it's called now.
Or those magnet schools.
Like all these, and that's what I think is beneficial for our community now, is that most high schools have a magnet program associated with it. So if you want to, go for business or law or something like that, you can get a taste of it in high school and see, is this really the move that I want to make, and follow through with a college education if that's what's necessary. Or is this not what I want to do, and I could take different routes and stuff like that. So I think that was something that was great about, like, both of my sisters graduated from VOTEC. Nikki is 7 years my senior. She's been with a cosmetology license right out of high school and has been doing her thing ever since. Mona had the TV and film production stuff and then pursued it with a college education, further. And then I went to Centennial and we didn't have trades or anything like that. Like, I just did my thing. But
that's wild.
But I also feel like as a community space, those trade schools and things of that nature is what's necessary, because then you have a choice. You have options. You have things that are available for you from coming out of high school that I can go into a trade and not need to wait, because I think college in a lot of spaces is a scam.
You said what's a scam?
It's college.
Oh, like, college in general. Okay.
The amount of money that you spend for the degree, and then you have to take requisite classes. So you take 13th and 14th grade that are just a waste of time, a lot of time.
Right.
Before you actually get into what your major classes are. And if I was doing this in high school, then I would have already had those trades concentration, like right off top, without spending any of my own money or having to take out loans. And I can come out with, licenses and different things to be able to go and make money for myself as an electrician or as an auto mechanic, or, like whatever that looks like.
Right.
And I think for sure that, college for me was a lot of social. To be honest.
I would agree there. I was there too.
Couple of years, like being not that I'm not Greek, but being involved with my Greek circle of friends and stuff. Yeah. It was about Kappa parties, Alpha parties, turning up, and living that life. Like, was definitely, and even what my daddy talks about, he does not talk about his degree from Grambling.
It talks about the culture experience.
The vibe, the energy, having that experience to start to, like, make your own path, as a young adult. That was like the biggest impact college had for me, was I could be unapologetically black here, and I ain't got to choose. I don't have to worry about how my mom feels, how my dad feels. I could just step in and be she for whoever that is. Right. And I didn't have that opportunity until college. Also kind of the issue of us not having black educators. Right.
So,
how many black, so go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that really quick. So when we talk about education versus reality in the community space, you brought up a really good point, right? Like having access to trade schools, even in high school. You know what I mean? So I think for us, Sean, I don't know about you, but even at Brindley, I would have loved to have someone come and speak to us to say these opportunities are available to you.
I felt the same.
Not just, okay, y'all gonna go to Cimarron and that's it.
And that's
your
it.
classes. Because growing up, especially in being black, we don't know the opportunities that are available to us after you graduate high school or after you graduate college. We only know about these 3-4 major careers, being a doctor, a lawyer. And who's going to be that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It costs so much and it takes so long and it's discouraging. And we don't have the grades to get into those schools, right? So how can we get into these spaces if we don't even know about them?
Yeah, because I'll speak to us being that where we were. We went to Brindley Middle School back in the early 2000s. Yeah. Everyone went to Brindley. Or you went to Brindley, Garside, Swanston, those schools. Yeah. It was, you just wanted to survive. And we grew that survival mentality very quick. I can tell you, I wasn't someone who did so well at Brindley. I couldn't stand it. I was someone who was getting bullied. I had to fight my way through, but then there were certain cats I wasn't gonna fight because I knew who they were. Like, yo, I wasn't gonna get shot. Like, all right, cool, I'm gonna just take the L and move and just walk away. And then half the time those dudes would leave you alone, but it was just like, you dealing with those barriers on top of, hey, education is gonna get you here. Well, am I gonna even make it to 18? To there? Like, a lot of us, it was Cimarron, the Dub, Western, and it wasn't even those possibilities. Like, I'm thankful that Canyon Springs was new enough and did come to Brindley, and no one really bit at it. It was just like, okay, yeah, law magnet program. I was like, oh, this is my way to get out of this side of the town. To go that way, I'm going. So I applied and I got in, and that's when my mind elevated right to like it, because now I'm at a school where I'm in a law preparatory academy, and I'm meeting lawyers, but then I'm also seeing I'm at a predominantly black and Hispanic school, but everyone in my magnet program was white, and getting bussed out from Henderson to the east side, and I was like, okay, like this is crazy, because at Canyon Springs it was both. It was a magnet school and a regular school, and I wasn't seeing some of my friends in the same classes I was in. I was taking AP classes, and I'm just like, man, like, the way we look at education is completely different. I see what you can do with it, but I had people in my corner, there was different alphas outside of school who was telling me, Liz, this is what you can do with it. Like, you can own businesses here, but you got to move this way, right? Because my big brother's he's a lawyer and a realtor. He has his own mortgage company, right? But he's also Nigerian. That's a whole different type of culture mindset as well. But we don't talk about those things, especially when it comes to education. Because how many black teachers did we have at Brindley?
I just had that conversation yesterday. No, I never had a black teacher.
What?
Yeah.
I don't remember having one. I went to Swanston.
You went to Swanston? Yeah. And I don't count coaches. Sorry.
Yeah.
I should.
Coaches and support staff.
Yeah, and unfortunately that doesn't count. They're not licensed. So.
I had 2. First grade, Mrs. Branch. I'll never forget her. Then junior year, Dr. Padres, who taught trigonometry. What type of black man teaches trigonometry?
But further than that, how many black students are actually in that class?
It was a lot of us in that class, but yeah.
I had the same, because I went to Valley High School before I was incarcerated, and I was in the IB program.
Okay, bet.
Right, but it was the same thing. I think I was like the only black, like that was in that program for sure.
In the IB program?
Absolutely, yeah. During my time, and that was in 2003. And so it was a culture shock for me, because we living in the hood. They bring the bus come, and I was trying to balance that out.
Yeah.
The same thing, just the social, the social balance, because I remember, vividly just come, because I was gang banging at the time.
Right.
I was involved with gangs, coming with red rags and an IB uniform.
Mm-hmm.
My teacher, Dean, like,
like, hold on, sir.
like, get your life together.
Make it make sense.
Yeah, get your life together.
That don't make sense, sir. Like, you're going to have to figure it out.
One thing I will say about being in that magnet program was the exposure.
Okay.
Right? Because when we would have like our weekly meetings, just even from a college standpoint, these kids were talking, I'm going to Harvard. At the time, I was like, I'm going to MIT. I want to be a nuclear engineer.
Yo.
Right?
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I ain't gonna hold you. I didn't know that about you, but I salute you even saying that. Proceed.
I wanted to be a nuclear engineer, and so that program was structured for that, right? Wow. They were like, it was like a 4-year preparatorial college program. IB, AP class. It was a little bit higher than AP classes there at Valley, right? IB classes, but it was the same thing, the exposure, and that's imperative. in our school systems, so we're getting to college, but even before college, in high school, in middle school, what type of exposure are we getting, and is that exposure conducive to like the individuals we need to be or want to be, right? Because a lot of things like it's life skills. Like whether I go to college, whether I get a trade, it's basic life skills that we're not learning and we're struggling with. That's affecting us like more so than your college degree, like networking. Like a lot of people don't like. You get people. I hear a lot of people. I don't like to talk and I don't like to speak. Well, that's like your biggest.
That's your biggest. That's biggest instrument when it comes. You got to be able to market yourself. Like you can't be scared. Like, and that's the one conception I do not like when it comes to. I'll say our culture. If we express ourselves too much, we're too cocky, and it's like. Why can't I talk about my accomplishments and be humble about it? But like, why can't I say like, yo, I've done this, I've worked with this person who's phenomenal as well, without it coming off as bragging. Absolutely. But a part of that is preparation, because what I'm hearing off this conversation is preparation. Yeah. And it's funny y'all talk about preparation, because before I get to my second question, because it has to do with COVID. Yeah. But do you feel like, do you all feel that not even just the school districts, higher ed, even, and I'll hold us accountable too. Our community, do you feel like we've done enough to prepare our youth, right? Prepare our youth for what's coming, even if we're not knowledgeable of what it is. Have we prepared ourselves and our youth to what's going on out there? Have we diligently done the work?
Absolutely not.
I think we work towards it, but I don't think that enough of us have taken on that task. And I don't think there, even like you said, with basic life skills, communication skills, how to work well with others. Those are things that we have to learn in the home a lot of times, or even in those early childhood programs that I don't think that we're getting. You know what I mean? As students or as children. So yeah, I don't think we're doing a great job.
And I agree with all of that except the home part. And because I hear that, like, education starts at home. It's too many variables for education to start at home. My mom could be a crackhead. Yeah. My daddy could be whooping my mom every day of the week, right? I can grow up where, I got to run to the house from school. Like, there's too many variables in a household for us to put any education on a household. I think with that younger institution where, like, institutionalized education is imperative, right? I'm all the way with that at a young age, right? So I'm with you all the way on that. I just feel like there's way too many variables where you can't get education. Can my mom read?
Right.
Are they illiterate?
Right.
But are they connecting with resources?
And that's what I'm saying.
If they can
connect you even with them resources.
There are so many resources that push into the hood. And then I think that's also part of the problem too, is that folks just make up that blackness is hood.
Right.
And you got black folks that run the gamut.
Right.
And I think that's another big part of the breakdown, is that most things that we push into as far as resources and stuff, AmDOT wasn't coming to Centennial, bro.
That was
prep, they only in the hood because they feel like those are the only black kids that need that support. Right. Meanwhile, you got black kids that are first generation that I lived. I don't even know, I wasn't in that life or anything like that, but I lived in the neighborhood between Gibson and Ruth 5 and Western. That was my space until junior high. Like, if I would have stayed there, then yeah, sure, I would have probably been able to know what it is for Greek life, know what black schools are, know all this, because they'd be pushing into those areas. My sister was a fighter, got in fights all the time. My mama was like, before you go to Gibson, because Nikki done got, all kind of jumped and stuff, black, brown fights and stuff, we're going to move up and you're going to be going to Mulaski and, Centennial.
Okay.
But we didn't have access, the question of access, yeah, sure. I grew up in a two-parent household type vibe. I was with my daddy a lot. They were both present. They wasn't in the same house. But education was pushed on me. But did I have the resources to be able to go and do the things that I wanted, that I didn't know that I wanted to do, but I would have if I was exposed to it? And then part of it is but because I was in a good zip code at that point, I didn't get exposed to those different things.
Like the youth groups and stuff. Well, because I will tell you though, it's different. It would as I became an adult back then, yes, around our time, early 2000s, if you was from the north or from the west side, you was in the Kappa League, you was a Sigma Beta, you was an Phi or a Diva, and everyone you knew, pretty much everyone from 6-0 was an M Fire diva. Like, and then you got the Pretty Boys Capital League, everyone was there. But then as we matriculated out, and these generation of kids that I've been mentoring, they come from Bishop Gorman. They come from Centennial. They come from Desert Pines and all these other schools, and they drive. But the problem is they're driving out from their areas to the west side still.
Might also have older siblings or older people in order to push that influence
That too.
from when we were younger to push that.
That too.
The amount of stuff that I'm able to do at Canyon
Yeah.
and put on Black History events and have all that stuff, or at, Finley, I know I wasn't able to do the same. I left Shadow Ridge because they wouldn't even acknowledge Black History Month.
But that's the community aspect you talking on, because certain schools,
Black kids there. There's
you're
Black
right.
teachers. There's Black,
Yeah.
all Black everything everywhere, and we have it in this monolithic type space that Black is hood, Black is this is this area, it's the North or it's the West.
Yeah.
But, like you say, there's Black kids at Gorman, there's Black kids at Centennial, there's Black kids
Desert
at
Pines, all these kids on the east.
But they also have those spaces that you could be in those spaces, and that doesn't mean that your home environment is still conducive to an education.
That's true.
Yeah.
And that your parent, like my mama, she wasn't helping me with no homework.
Right.
I had to figure that out, it was just good that I was smart, you know, but had I had not been, there wasn't nobody in the home to help me.
Right.
There's not, my mom wasn't pushing you going to college or any of that. Yeah, if you want to, but she didn't know no better to even tell us
to tell you better.
So.
Well, I do want to just add to that, because I understand what you're saying too, but when I say it starts in the home, what I mean by that is it starts in the community, right?
I agree.
Because I don't know about y'all, but I went to Operation Independence.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't really, my dad was in my life as well, but he was on drugs, most of my life. So I get it, having that not having that realm where your mom has the time to even teach you,
Yeah.
I remember, I'm never doing no homework. You know what I mean? Because I didn't have that in my home, even though my mom wanted to be that wasn't her reality. But when I say that is, our teachers don't care. You know what I mean? They're not teaching us those skills that we need. So that's why we need our community to do that. And that's what I mean by in the home. So, and again, we only have a couple Black teachers.
Yeah.
And the teachers that are there, they're, overexhausted, and they don't have the resources themselves to help. So we really have to build a stronger community when it comes to those basic life
Right.
skills.
I agree with you, because I will say though, depending on where you were at, certain teachers didn't care, but I've bounced around to see teachers who did, right? And of course I know we're not bashing, we're just talking about our experience, and then a lot of our professions where we interacted with people, and it's oh, you're the ones that our students talk about, that don't care, or they don't feel okay, what's the all I have to do is this, and just I'll move on to the next. Okay, cool.
They just pass you. And I do want to make one addition to that is, even research and studies have shown that Black students have better academic outcomes when they're in front of a Black teacher.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? So that's not by chance.
Yeah.
So it's cultural differences. White teachers don't understand what Black students go through in the household.
That's true.
In the community. So
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Even in the mental health space, I say that.
Yeah.
We got someone that's from Virginia, doing a study, on a small village out there, and you're trying to make it, comparative to me growing up in a certain area. You can't do that. You can't take this general approach to a specific individual, especially cultural differences. It's not only relevant, it's everything. You have to understand that. I need to be able to identify with you culturally. These things that you just may not understand, and that I think so. We do need more we need more Blacks in the school system, and so it is a community thing. I say that to my mentors all the time, because even on the West Side, when I'm dealing with a lot of these old heads, it's always about what they want to leave for the kids and what they want to leave for the kids. And I'm like, listen, for you to educate your kid without educating his friends, you failed.
You failed. That's true. That's a fact.
You failed, bro.
That's a fact.
It got to be a community thing, right? You got to, all his little homeboys and everything, they got to be in that same group, that same conversation, because they're going to have more of an impact than you ever can when you're out there.
Right. And something that's great. You bring up the fact of more teachers. There was an article I read last semester that talked about urban schools, right? How you have 79% of these schools across the U.S. are heavily populated, are diverse, a lot minority, right? And then you have 89% of teachers who are white women, right? And a huge part of that, I don't have a problem if you're white. I think I have a problem when you're not properly trained on culture. And then you don't know how to interact with people, right? And then there's not proper training that goes on. I think that's the problem I have, right? And it's not that a teacher is white or black. I just think training and understanding, being willing to understand outside of your own biases, right? Because then you roll into the problem of special ed. And that's a whole nother, and that's where I want to get into, right? Because my next question for y'all is now that we talk, like, just in general about our experiences, preparation, what our students are going through now, is our juvenile and special needs youth being put in thriving positions pre-COVID and post-COVID, like during COVID, because we're in COVID now, and that's a hard one.
Over 100,000 students didn't have access to Chromebooks.
Over how many?
Over like 100, not 100,000. I'm sorry. Over like, it was close to that number.
Yeah,
it
was up there.
It was a lot of students didn't even have access to Chromebooks in our district. So that way meaning we didn't have the infrastructure to support a pandemic, to support Black and brown students. They just gave up on them, in my opinion.
Okay.
So.
Oh, man. Because I know you work in special ed teacher.
My soapbox.
Right. I had a friend who I think he works with you, who's a special ed teacher as well. And we had the conversation about, because he's getting his PhD as well in special needs. Yeah, Simmons.
Yeah.
He's doing his thing. Cool brother. And what we had the conversation on is, teachers and other counselors have reached out to parents, even done home visits. So it's that balance of, okay, the ones who do care, like I know this brother cares, who's reached out to students and who's gone to people's houses to get their student, and their parent isn't holding their kid accountable. Yeah. And this is besides just special needs, but because we're gonna get there. But just the fact of, okay, now we done that part, but then there's accountability on the parents' part. Like, where's the balance?
Checking boxes.
Checking boxes.
That's all it is. Like, oh, we did a home visit. I could check that I did a wellness check on this person. What is your intention behind the things that you are doing, or the systems that you're putting in play, or the infrastructure to have kids be successful in this space? And a lot of it's not there. Like, you could do home visits and check, but the parents still got to work because they still got to put food on the thing, on the table.
Right.
So you got older siblings taking care of younger siblings while trying to go to school. Like, I have a home where one of them was my quarterback last year. He's in high school now. I got 2 6th graders. They got another younger sibling, and the oldest one is a junior at Mojave. Mama got to work,
right,
so she could still pay all the bills. So that means it's a free for all at home until she gets home.
Right.
And she's like, everybody got to go to school. But if my first period, one of the brothers that I got in that class, he sleep. He'll log on, but he sleep. He ain't got nobody to hold him accountable because she's still trying to do her work.
Right.
Or, the next kid is trying to do what they have to do. So they're sitting up here and they're in a position to where they're having to take care of themselves. Ain't no 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader, or high schooler really going to be in a position to where they are being that responsible for themselves.
Right.
Like, in college, we struggle with time management and stuff like that for online education. Like, I'm way better at going to school in class than I am taking an online class. So how can I have those expectations for a 3rd grader, 4th grader, 6th grader?
Right.
And then at the same space, you do a wellness check. Yeah, okay, we're good, we're here. But can they pay all their bills? Yeah. Can they pay the internet bill? And Cox is taxing.
Yeah.
And it could right now. And that's
considering they got an enterprise grant for $1 for that plot of
Are you
land they
serious?
got over there. Yeah, absolutely. That's all the enterprise
So
grants.
all
So
the
you
things
right
like
on the
this.
west side. Y'all got this plot of land for $1, right? And so y'all can come in our community, right? You can get this for pennies on the dollar, literally pennies on the dollar. And there's no kickbacks to the community. We ain't got no free Wi-Fi going on around here.
And that's an issue.
That's a big
totally
issue. That's a big issue.
Right? They don't have those
I'm
spaces
puzzled.
to go to, you can't go and sit at Starbucks and
No, you
work
can't.
for all day because
Get the police called on you.
well, there's that, and then there's also we have a maximum occupancy now. So if you ain't sitting up here actually purchasing anything, the libraries are barely open. Everything has a capacity thing. So even if I do start to get a little bit more strategic about how I'm going. Like, I'll have kids that disappear for a week. I'll be like, hey, so-and-so, where you been at, little homie? Like, I ain't seen you in a week. And he'd be like, sorry, miss, like, I couldn't walk to the library and because I had to take care of my siblings and we didn't have internet for last week. So, like, it's not even a matter all the time on whether or not they have, like, the resilience to keep pushing through and wanting to do it. It's like, do I have the time and,
And is this one of your students who's special needs as well?
All my kids are sped.
So all your kids, so, because that's the part that kills me, right? Like, that's a special needs student who's verbal. Yeah. There's non-verbal students.
Oh, I work with kids with autism.
You too? Okay.
Yeah, like,
how, like, and that's why I'm like,
their parents are home though.
Their parents are home. Okay.
But it's like, I wonder what that looks like for those parents that, like, now that I don't have the school to babysit my kid on top of educating them, how am I supposed to be making money? How am I supposed to do things? Because my some of my kids, like, they ain't doing nothing if they don't have a parent sitting with them doing it right there with them. They're still on PEC systems and all this other, like, very, like, elementary stuff in high school or junior high and stuff, that they just don't have the skill set to be able to work independently.
Right. And
I can't support them. Like, if I can't even get you to get on, how am I supposed to support you? If you can't navigate, we haven't taught the kids well enough how to navigate through different tabs. And, like, our kid that called me, I'm not putting him out there, but
okay, I got you.
He's like, miss, I'm trying really hard in high school this year, because he was, like, one of my goofballs
for
7th and 8th grade year. But I'm trying super hard. It's just really hard because I'll have to open up 10 tabs in first period. And then by the time I go to next period, like, I've got so many tabs open, like, I don't even know how to get through the stuff, and it's overwhelming. So then it's in that space for SPED. Are you able to apply all of the accommodations and the supports that these kids need virtually? And do you have the support from home for them to be able to back it up on the other end? Because then from the parent perspective, because I'm sister mom to my little brother.
Right.
There's so much that I have like 3 hours of homework every night on top of my teacher responsibilities of having, like, my little brother be successful in this school space, because he has an IEP and he be struggling, and they'll give him, like, chapters or paragraphs to read. And yeah, sure, we give you something to chunk,
right? But
it's so, like, elaborate, it's like, this isn't even possible to. I'm overwhelmed. So I know that you're overwhelmed with the amount of work.
My God.
Or the whatever. So it's like, I just don't think, not at all.
Well, I want to add to that, because I can't answer this conversation from an educator's perspective, but I work with educators every day, right?
Right.
And I want to applaud that brother for even doing house checks, or whoever else does. Yeah. Y'all don't know how many calls I got at the beginning of the school year, like, do I have to call these students? Like, of course, our white teachers, like, I don't want to check in on them. Why do I need to do this? And I'm like, do you know that these children are struggling at home? Like, they don't have, their parents have to work, if they're even able to work. If they're having a hard time putting food on the table. These students are struggling. So why wouldn't you want to reach out to your students? So I wanted to go back to that. Like, I applaud y'all for actually even taking those necessary steps to check on the students.
Man, listen. Like, I had so many at CSN where I work. I've had students say, "Hey, Brother Sean," because at this point, they all come to Brother Sean, like, yo, I'll see you when we back in. Yeah. They're not even, because they were like, I got to work.
Oh, yeah.
And these are adults now. Like, how are you going to tell an adult no? Especially here, our special needs students who have IEPs, they all go to the DRC. And it's tough for them. Yeah. And I have a colleague whose daughter's nonverbal, and she, on top of the meetings we got to do, on top of stuff we got to do at CSN, she struggles to make sure her daughter, who's nonverbal, is on live, paying attention to the teacher. The teacher's like, can you get her to do this? I'm in a meeting at the same time. I got to speak because I have to report on top of that. And then I'm just like, yo, I pray for y'all, because my daughters, they're at private school. So I'm blessed and I don't even complain. Yeah. But I just sit here and think about, man, my special needs students, my friends like you and Simmons who work with special needs, and then I think about my juvenile youth, because I used to work with juveniles, right? I used to go up to Spring Mountain and work with those kids, help them put them on WEXs, get them checks, all that stuff. But I saw how education was ran up there for them, and now the mountain's closed. They're all down here.
I didn't know they closed the mountain.
Yeah, they closed the mountain because of COVID. They had to close it, and they're all down here. They're all at the CDC.
Caliente and like Elko.
No, not Elko, but Spring Mountain Youth Camp. They
Yeah, I
closed.
know Spring Mountain, but there's other like.
Yeah, there's other ones.
They're
Yeah,
still open.
they're still open.
Still taking job
Elko's,
positions,
yeah,
Is that right?
they're still
They're
open.
understaffed, because I
Yeah.
know that there's more than a few sped positions that are open, because I applied to go and work, like,
Up there?
for next year.
Oh, for next year?
But
Okay.
they open, but it would be a question of how good is the education
The
actually.
education is horrible. I went to all of them. So I've been to Spring
And-
Mountain,
and that-
Caliente, and Elko.
That's what I was gonna ask you. So, like, how was that? Like, cause from your personal experience, I seen it from a professional as a professional,
Yeah.
but you being in it.
So I had a different experience because I was pretty smart as a kid. So I was always engaged. You know, I like magnet classes and everything else, and I was always self-educated. So I was good on that end. But what I will say is that there's a direct correlation between special ed, because I was an IEP, right? I was considered special ed for behavioral problems, right? And there's a direct correlation between like IEP students and the juvenile
Right.
in Spring Mountain.
Prison pipeline.
Like we all like that's like that process, and honestly, from elementary being in them IEP meetings
Right.
to going to the board in prison, it's all the same.
Yeah.
The process is the same, right? Like the whole process is the same, and it's scary because you realize like we were trained,
Yeah.
right? We were trained. There were certain words that were used. There were certain environments that we were put in,
Right.
that was training us, that was shaping us to be an inmate, right from the very beginning, and like, and so. Again, on the education, I'm trying not to get choked up about it because it's sick.
Yeah.
Like it's a methodical plan, and I'm not trying to get on like no conspiracy theory. And
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. This is the space. This is the space to talk about it. This is the space where we talk about it, right?
It's a methodical plan.
This is the space, and that's why I wanted to ask, because I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm sitting here talking about it. We're talking about all of it, because there's for every pro, there's about 3 cons that come with it. Especially for black youth, right? And of course, you know, I work with all my students, but for anybody that knows me that works at CSN, I'm all for my black students, but I make sure I give the same energy to my Hispanic kids, my Latinx kids, my Asian American. I give them the same energy because I know what I represent for these students, right? And this is why this is the conversation why I got into education, especially higher ed. And I understood the preparation. Like I was prepared, small glimpse. Like a lot of us were. There was something, because I joined this youth and I had to tap this person just to get it, but everyone else wasn't getting the same information. And then I had to tell the homies like, hey, let's do this. And even my students now, there's 2 of my young ones who's here with us doing this episode, and I'm like, all right, this is what you need to do. This is who you got to talk to. But not all their peers are getting the same information. And that's the problem I have. And I did have one last question to end this out today. I wish we had more. I wish we could go more. Yeah, but this is something that's ongoing. This ain't gonna be the last time. I promise you. This did this strategically. But with us talking about everything we talked about, access, preparation, community, about how each of our students in the same city are getting taught differently at different parts of the community, what form of education is best for our youth? I don't think it's something, personally for me, I don't think it's something you can just say there's one way.
I don't see that. I can't just say, and I hate to like categorize education because there's just so many ways you can, spin this conversation.
Right.
What I do believe, and it's not a cop-out, but what I do believe is that we just need more mentors to actually individually deal with our youth, because we all learn different. Right. We all have different, like I said, we have different variables. Yeah. And so even with the IEP thing, not to step back on that, like a lot of times we get categorized because they don't understand the way we're expressing ourselves, right? Whether that's physically, verbally, or whatever, and then it's automatically, hey, you got a problem, medication, autism, you the special ed.
I'm just upset.
Now I'm labeled again. But like them same labels that I'm embarrassed by, right, that I'm hiding from, it's no different from them same labels that you're ex-felon, you're a convict. Like it's the labeling game. So I think that we just need more community. Right, that's actually taking an interest into our young, brothers and sisters and saying, hey, what is it that you have going on, and let me teach you life skills because I think there's universal facts.
Right.
I think there's like universal gems in life, right? That going to apply no matter what.
Right.
And I think if we can stand on that about like, hey, how you treat others, hey, how you communicate, things of this nature, then it'd be all right. Everything else is just specialization because it's based off what they want and where they want to go. But to categorize it and put them, it's the world is constantly changing. So what we teach them right now may not be applying in like 6-7 years.
It's true. It's
right?
contingent.
So they need some type of like, I think, moral code, moral conduct, ethical conduct about themselves to like keep them going no matter how the world is changing.
Right.
I was to add to that, I totally agree. And I think we need a structure or a system that allows students to express themselves culturally, whether that be through the arts, socially, and like you said, etiquette, morals, just to really mold them up. And I always bring up Operation Independence because that was such a great program, a pre-K program, because I feel like everyone who went through that program is like into the community, into the arts in some way or in some capacity. So really implement those things because, of course, like you said earlier, Black people are not a monolith, and we have so many different aspects to us and so many different things that we can go into. We have to teach our kids from the very beginning the possibilities. The possibilities are endless. Like, this is what you can do. You don't have to just be a doctor or a lawyer. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a teacher. There's so much you can do, but we don't know that.
Yeah.
So I think really getting into the heads of children at a young age and really molding them. You know what I mean? To be who they want to be, not who we want them to be.
And critical thinking.
Critical thinking, yes.
That's what I want to, like, that's so important. Like, our education system we base intelligence on memorization, right? And that's just, like,
I'm terrible at tests.
And I was the opposite. I was always good at tests, but like that's not the real world.
I agree.
Problems are happening. You need to be able to make like quick decisions fast because you're always into the problem solving in the industry. And I think if we can really like create studies or curriculums that strictly work on problem solving, just critical thinking, I think like that's a good way to go. Yeah. No matter what industry you're in, whether you're a doctor, lawyer, police. In the education, you're going to always have problems, and you're going to always have to have decisions and make the right decisions. Right. How do you do that? What does that process look like?
Right.
And so I think more training on that, strengthening that muscle, would be a good way to start.
Yeah.
My man.
And in that space, you wouldn't really need special education.
Right.
Or, when you're coming from that capacity of, like, to run back, even though I know you say we short on time, but like the labeling, Simmons had a survey that he had just had us fill out. And I can't remember the last kid that was put into SPED for an emotional disturbance, which is like the behavioral stuff in secondary. So while these kids are in elementary school, have no concept of like coping skills, emotional intelligence, things of that nature, we're sitting here and putting them in a space where now they're labeled, and the school to prison pipeline is literally the seats, and I have to tell my kids this every year because I have the bad kids at whatever school because I just connect with them, and they'll give them to me for their entire time that they're at the school. But it's like for every desk that they feel is another bed in prison because and that's like real.
That's where the pipeline is.
No, it's real.
It's real. I know.
Is significantly based off Black boys in special ed, and even more so with the mild to moderate disability categories of emotional disturbance, learning disability, conduct disorder, and all of those are extremely subjective. Like one kid being bad for a white teacher who's from the suburbs, coming over here trying to teach in the hood, does not deal with Black people outside of her 9 to 5 of being here, doesn't, the Black kids don't deal with white folks outside of being in this space, and they are expected to have to code switch constantly. But the white folks are not in a position to where they have to code switch and learn our codes and learn our culture. We have to switch to them and conform and stuff, as opposed to being in a space where our Black genius or our way of expressing ourselves in hands and talking, okay, period, all that type of stuff is not intimidating to them, because as soon as they get intimidated by some little black boy or a black girl because they disrespected them in the class, because my classroom is my kingdom and I can run this how I want to, and if I try and press an issue, you wouldn't press that same issue with that little black boy or girl on the street. So don't do it in here. And
policing.
But I have the space where
policing our tones.
I got like in the space where I can do it in here, and if you press the issue back with me, I can send you to the dean's office. Now you got paperwork on you. Oh, you do it enough, but we're not taking into like consideration like the antecedent. We're just trying to like label the behavior and then put out consequences, and all that stuff is on some white stuff. Like is having to conform to their system that does not support us. So to answer the question, well, I know you had a second part of the question on part 2, so I just want to answer that piece. Is it had said something about what is the biggest struggle that you think will be coming from us shifting back after COVID?
So post-COVID,
Post-COVID is all these black and brown boys and girls are going to have to be in that white environment again. And that's something that is scary.
It is.
Because while I am talking to a kid over the computer and being like, yo, Dante, I need you to pay attention, sir. Come on. Dante's at home and he's in his safe space. I mean, conditionally. Like, home might be safe, might not be safe. But whatever that looks like, you're in a space that's comfortable for you. Like, now, when it's time for you to come back, well, now you got to get back into the system. And now you're back in my space. And now I could press issues, because you could just disconnect. Like kids be, girl, I got to hear this. What you going to do? Click, and be done.
And be done.
But now, once they have to start coming back, and we're having them come back to the same old thing, because these white teachers have not all of a sudden done a 180 and figured it out. They haven't been putting in the efforts and stuff to get to know black and brown community norms, cultural norms and stuff, so that way when these kids do step back into a space after being in the pandemic and George Floyd and all those things, we still have a white administration that doesn't want to address those triggers within our community, even though we have black teachers and black kids that we're still having to work with. Like, it's crazy, like the idea that, and once we go back next year, we're gonna be right back on the same thing, and all these black boys and girls, Hispanic boys and girls, are gonna have to be right back in white spaces, having to code switch and figure out how to navigate that system.
Well,
go ahead. No, you go ahead.
To add to that, so there have been bills. Well, there was a bill passed that kind of made it a lot more difficult, and I'm sure you know about it as an educator, made it more difficult for students to be, I don't want to say reprimanded, but to be suspended, right, from school. However, we are still not addressing why these students are even in this predicament in the first place.
Girl, the kids will get kicked out of class. There'll be kids in class, no, you can't come in today. You can't even come in my class because you pissed me off yesterday.
And that's because we don't have culturally responsive educators within our school district. And then on top of that, if you look at others like Oakland Unified School District, right?
Like the best district.
I love it because I did a lot of research on it when I was working on a restorative justice bill here in Nevada, and I found that they have implemented peer circles. Like, they'll go before, restorative circles as well. Like, if you do something, you go in front of your peers, like, okay, why did you and Shishi fight? Okay, y'all can't be doing that shit. You know what I mean? Like, y'all need to chill because it affects X, Y, and Z in the community. This is going to be the repercussions if you do this out in the real world. And we don't implement that because, of course, we don't have that culturally responsive space in the district. And I think that we need to address those things. So, yeah, I feel like they made a step towards kind of breaking that elementary to prison pipeline. It's never going to change unless we really help our black and brown students really address these issues as to why they do feel this way.
It's not going to change because it's a business.
And
it's a big business.
It is.
And that's why I'll close, and this is why, man, I wish we can keep going, but I'll close with saying this, right? Because I agree with all y'all. I think there's two parts of it. Because I'm in curriculum instruction is why I got into this, to really create social change. But mentorship is one, but censorship. People don't talk about censorship, and I don't mean censorship as to limit with how you communicate. But I mean mentorship is really guiding you through a system. You're learning the system. But censorship is showing you the loopholes of how you put yourself, once you get in a position or once you're in those rooms, you create social change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what's important when we get to that part, right? And I think we've become the generation to challenge that, and things are happening because younger folks are coming in and making waves, and that's just the start. We have a lot more to go, and definitely. Definitely. And I want to thank y'all for coming to the UnconQuerable Because We Believe. That was episode 1. Please give round of applause for yourselves. This was episode 1, Education versus Reality. Thank y'all. I love y'all. And we out, man. That was it. Thank you. Thank you.